The mayor has a bunch of papers. Okay, this is a little bit after 7 o'clock. This is a meeting of the Athens City Council. Tonight is actually committee meeting night, but we are going to have a special session to read some ordinances that begins at 7:30. So we'll begin with committees, and I'm going to turn it over to the City Services Committee. At this point, I think, who's that? Member Bain.
The City Services Committee meeting has an energy efficiency block grant ordinance that we have to get up tonight to read, and that's one of the things we're going to be doing. At least I hope it is. And if you look at the, I've been doing so many things I can't remember which is what, but here we are. 07111. If everyone looks at it, just turn to the second page of this. You can see what happened when Ron Lucas, Paul Roque, Andy, and Allahu all got together, and it was the guys, and I sat with them, and I won't characterize myself at that point, but what we did was we had this meeting about how we could possibly save some money on our plant upgrade, and so they really strived and worked and hustled and got it together, and so now we have about a very good-sized grant, $550,000, and of which a good bit of it is reimbursed. So we're going to put all the money out there, but by this time next year we will have $362,000 back, which is a good deal. The bad deal is, of course, that you'll see as we go through this, we're going to have to borrow some money to do that. And Section 2 says that the auditor is hereby directed to borrow up to $500,000. I asked Debbie to change that, to requested to borrow up to $500,000, sort of a more friendly gesture. A one-year note at the most favorable interest rate for energy efficient conservation measures at the plant. We have then Section 3, where we appropriate the money, and then 4, in which you expend it, the Service Safety Director will expend it, and it's an emergency measure necessary for the public, for the health, welfare, and safety of the residents of the city of Athens. And we have a grant timeline, and I was trying to talk Jessica into kind of holding on a little bit, because this is going to be have to be done prior to the actual plant upgrade. But she said they have to order equipment, and that's good. In a few minutes, I'm going to say one reason why the upgrade won't cost so much is we are going to save electricity on this. We actually will, and so it'll show up in our costs in the future. Probably about equal to what it costs to, oh good, here's our fourth member, what it costs to redo, it'll probably be a wash. AEP will raise our power costs, and then we'll save money and we'll be equal, but so be it. Anyway, this is, I think that the mayor and the auditor kind of forged this out because I was flailing around with it, and I will continue to flail around with it. But anyway, there it is. If anybody has a question, you can bring it up now or later on. Oh, here's Kent working his way across the...
And this is, of course, part of the long-term upgrade we're talking about, the whole $12 million eventually that will go to it. But this is a grant component that's timeline to utilize it by
to be done first. And we have to say that the people involved, again, let me say, Paulo and Ron Lucas and Andy and Allahu all sat together, and we talked about how we just met with Burgess and Nipel, and so this represents a savings and probably makes our money go a bit further. So, questions about that?
Do you have a miscellaneous on this?
I don't know. City Services Committee, the second item, one that we have talked about before. There you go. Did I give you one, Paul?
I don't know. What is it?
Sewer increases?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
right here.
Oh, we've talked about this before, so effective 1 September, or perhaps it'll change. And so I've got a bunch of whereases there, and it's really amazing. I did them in Excel because that's where it was. But whereas the wet site upgrade has been in part ordered by EPA, and we need 2 clarifiers, both primaries and 2 secondary clarifiers, so that's it. whereas we have the beginnings of a design and must go through EPA approval. And so we may not be ready to do construction until late 2014. In other words, there's a delay. It'll probably take a year to do the design. It'll probably take another year. At least it took 9 months last time to go through the EPA approval process, because it's a pretty complicated process. Whereas the project cost is $12 million, whereas council proposes to borrow the money from the Ohio Water Development Corporation. Whereas the term of the loan, and I think we decided to try and keep rates lower, 30 years. And we're going to raise with this the first 5. Some longer term, council recognized the longer term may require some mechanical work later in the term of the loan, over 30 years. If you didn't do it, I guess you'd worry why somebody wouldn't be keeping their mechanicals up to date. I mean, if you have a furnace, you may have to replace some parts. Whereas electrical costs will be reduced by the energy efficiency grant funded by the stimulus. And maybe we can put ARA in there, but I couldn't remember the terms of it. Whereas the cost of UV bulbs is projected to be around $20,000 every 5 years. Whereas and so in other words, if you chuck that up to chlorine, it's not going to be more expensive, and it'll be a brand spanking new plant, maybe. Yeah, so in 20 years, they said the average lifespan is 5 years, which means some will go critical at 1 year, and some will last longer. But they are pretty pricey. Right now, they're about $300, and I imagine they could go up. Okay, here's another key point for those of you that are going to be here in future times. Whereas the payment of the 2 existing notes from OWDA will leave a balance in the account for a total amount available on the debt serve about $400,000. Debt service is estimated to be $600,000. Now, I want you all to understand we're not going into any loan agreement with OWDA at this point. That'll happen further down the road. You have to have the plans in hand, have them improved. So we're going to raise the rates and probably try to generate enough so we can almost pay off the engineering as we're waiting for the process of change to happen. And you can see how that might work. I mean, we will have, at the end of next year, $300,000 that we won't be paying for the 1987 borrowing, the Clean Water Act initial one, on sludge. But the sludge never was done right the first 3 times, and finally we did get it right. So we had to borrow some more. It's a startling amount of money, what can I say? Engineering, okay, whereas the current economic situation is very uncertain and subject to change. And I think right now we don't know what's going to happen with Senate Bill 5. I mean, there are lots of unknowns here. Now be it ordained by City Council that rates are increasing about 3% annual beginning, and I don't know what, we could say what term it goes through. And you can see the actual base rate increases and the gallon rate increases for the first 5 years. And then down at the bottom, you can actually see what will happen to the bill. I finally wedged it out of Andy. He finally told me it's about oh, I see a big mistake. Okay. It's about 4,000 is the average. And that's what he said. And then on the back, so we, somewhere in the vicinity of $30, up from roughly 26 to 30, maybe more. I'm not going to put that in the ordinance, but Article 2, council may change the rate structure in the intervening period, and we'll check the funds annually, especially before securing the OWDA loan. And Article 3, the upgrade is necessary to meet the requirements of EPA and reduce the odors, especially that one, with this design, the circular design. So I think that represents what we have decided on, but I'm not 100% sure. I think that some people would like us to go for 30 years, but I think that's way too long. I'd like to go back to the last one, whereas the current economic situation is very uncertain and subject to change. And if we put in those increases over time, we'll have a lot of money sitting in there, and you know where it's going to go. Yes?
Okay, a couple things. This, of course, is not up for reading tonight, so we still have time to work on it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This also dovetails with 06711, which is the engineering portion of the wastewater treatment plant. We're talking about going out for...
Yeah, except that, one of the things that I meant to say also before I started is that in between reading talking about the ordinance the first time and coming back the second time, they decided they needed to do geotechnic work. And so I requested information on why that was necessary, because we had done, first of all, the dry side or the sludge side geotechnic, and we'd also done work when we did the flow equalization plant. So I was puzzled. And they told me that when they took up the vacuum-assisted sludge drying facility, they found problems and they had to do extra work, which was news to me.
Okay.
But that's the way information used to flow. I mean, we didn't have a, people didn't talk about what was going on back in the times that was going on.
And
So I
again,
have no
the
idea.
payments are such that we will not be able to make, if we do take loans out for the upgrade, we have to put some increases in there. Again, 5 years is a good window to look at and see where we are in 5 years. By that time, we'll have most of it spent out, and we'll know what kind of hole we've dug ourselves into financially at that point.
Yeah, but the key point is you're going to have, we're going to have roughly 2/3 of the debt service payment because of the amount of money that we borrowed and we won't be paying back now. So that's not a bad deal.
It needs to be done, too.
Yes, it does.
Thanks
Okay.
for putting this together, all the whereases.
All the whereases, those are just supposed to be informative. And, I have to say that there was some question about whether we had to change this whereas. Basically, they're just kind of setting the stage for what was going on, and they aren't necessarily binding, are they? Okay.
Well, actually, what I find useful about the whereases is if I start doing searches in the old ordinances with a keyword, if
Yeah.
I can grab one of those keywords that's in a whereas, it's very helpful.
Yeah, so, we'll be having the increases in place before. And I did talk to the service director about, although sewer funds are rates are higher than the water funds, about trying to, about the base rates. For example, I wondered if we should split the base rate in two in some places or increase it more, but I don't think we came to any solution on that. So we'll just put this forward, and you can change it all next year as far as I'm concerned. It's just there. It's something we started in. Anybody have a question? Yeah?
Since you said you put this on a Excel spreadsheet, can you send it to us?
Absolutely.
So we can
Absolutely.
do all the math on a spreadsheet and...
Yeah, it's really high-powered math, too.
I know, but it's always fun. It makes it much easier than trying to do math on a document, Word doc.
Okay. Any others? Okay, let's see, is there anything else? Oh, also under this, we have the RCRA, and we're going to have Debbie Walker do some magic on this. We have some uncovered by the first situation. We have some others that weren't, so we'll be back to you on that. And if that's not very convoluted, I don't know what is. Anybody else?
We were just talking, I was going to bring up the money needed for the EPA settlement,
I just
not the
did.
settlement, but the attorney fees related to the settlement that we don't know what it's going to be yet.
That's what I just said.
I know, that's what I'm saying. So that, you just said, I just said that's what we were talking about.
Okay. Okay, we're ready?
Just a little.
I'm done
We intend to have that up
for
on the
reading.
5th.
And I hope we can suspend. Okay, here we are. Finance.
Finance and Personnel, there is an ordinance for first reading attached to your packets about appropriation ordinance, amending appropriation ordinance 01-2010 by $10,000 and move that money to the Community Corrections Act Fund 235. This was brought to us by Judge Grimm's office. They changed administrators of grant funds, and the current administrator was ready to do some end of grant year expenditures and discovered that the money had not actually been encumbered. Grants flow into the auditor's office, and then the auditor, through the council, encumbers money to be spent from those funds. That allows the auditor's office to keep track of money coming and going. And so the real kicker here is that this is the end of the fiscal year for this grant. And so the municipal court office is asking us as city council to approve this $10,000 appropriation to allow this money to be expended and use up the funds in the grant by the end of June, which is coming up pretty quickly. So we will have first reading on that tonight. Obviously, we don't have enough people to vote. It is very possible that we might have enough people at the town, city council members at the town hall meeting tomorrow night to actually suspend on this ordinance. So we're going to schedule a special session at 8:30 at the community center to deal with just this ordinance. If it works that way, then it's passed, the money is appropriated, and the municipal court can expend their money on things that they need. This is a grant that pays for an intensive probation grant. The court has had it since 1998. This operates out of the old highway patrol station up on Columbus Road. Is that Columbus Road or Lancaster Street?
Columbus,
Okay. So they're very anxious for this to continue. And so we'll schedule this meeting. If we don't have enough members present at that meeting, we will meet in the council office 12 o'clock Thursday at noon to have third reading on this ordinance to allow it to pass. So that's the Community Corrections Act grant.
Let me mention that
Yes.
this is one of those, again, some of these go through the fiscal year and some to the calendar. Since we work off calendar years, appropriations sometimes do have a mismatch like this. Trying to estimate what how much is going to be used and spent in a 6-month period to reinitiate it. It does get difficult. So we'll have a chance to see council in action at the town hall meeting. Huh?
Yeah, well, at the very end. We hope.
Okay.
We have obviously some council members who are traveling. They think that they'll be back by 8:30, so we'll see how that works tomorrow night. Medical insurance, I think Member Bain has some comments on medical insurance.
Okay. Very quickly, in December, we put together an ordinance, or 12210, on fringe benefits for the non-union personnel. And we're ready to implement those, although there was some confusion in my mind. I always thought that our insurance policy started the 1st of August, or I wouldn't have put that date on there, and nobody corrected me. And then our new personnel person said, or discovered that it's really the 1st of January, so, which makes a lot of sense. But anyway, having said that, there are a few things that we would like to change, or I would like to change under 7B2. We talk about United Healthcare Preferred Provider Network option available to all employees. Benefits, deductibles, and copays are stated in the plan document prepared by the city's contracted agents. We did not use the term UMR because you might put in another provider next year, and I believe that that gives the new personnel director some flexibility. And then we also are going to strike out that we're not going to be provided 2 health care plan options. We only have one. We added, and then also shown in yellow, one of the things that happened is we didn't have a procedure in place to have the fixed cost, which we use as the basis for this. And I want to encourage you to kind of put it in your mind and remember, although Kent is the only one here, so Kent, it's all on you. The 35% was just a way to find, because we are self-insured, so we're self-insured, and we wanted a premium participation, and devised the 35%. There is nothing magical about it. It could be 1%, it could be 75%. And who knows what it'll be if SB 5 stays on the books. So anyway, that will be moot at that point, but 35% is not magic, it's a compromise. Okay? It took a long time to get to that point. The other thing is, because all insurance participants in the non-union are currently paying, will be paying, we're eliminating C. This is an archaic item, goes way back. It's gone once we finish this ordinance. Since everybody is paying, we won't pay people not to take our insurance. I would also like the personnel director, and I've talked to her about it, come up with a way to avoid double coverage. Because if you have only so much money for benefits, if somebody's double dipping, I mean, but I don't see that it's going to be a big problem. Flip over to the last page. One thing I realized as I was looking at it, going into council last week, is that we didn't have an in-between point. We also do not have a scale based on income, which you may choose to add later on. But the monthly premium for singles is $46.77, which is approximately $100 less than Medicare recipients pay. So it's hard to talk in this group about insurance because a lot of people don't have it and the rest are on university. But anyway, dependent, $63.55 1 month, and family, $80.32. So we found a midpoint there. And then on January 1st, 2012, last time, I thought this was going in, but apparently it wasn't. And we have a deductible. We don't have copay. Once again, the personnel director may be back to us saying, I think you should put a copay in, but we have $150, $300, and $600 as for one. And once again, relating to Medicare, it's like the deductible is slightly less than the Medicare deductible. And you all know what people think of Medicare, so. Okay. Then it talks about co-insurance. You can review the plan. The plan, if you're in system, is fabulous. So 100% pretty much paid. I don't know how long it'll last, but it's great the way it is. Maximum out of pocket, and lifetime maximum $2 million we added last time. Anybody have a question about that? I'd like to put it up for reading next time. Since almost we're half here. I'm certainly half here, but anyway, this is Claudia Regan, the new personnel person, has been very helpful on this. We're going through, working it out, learning herself. I think she was relatively shocked that that ranges were actually established by council and not the insurance company, and a few other things like that. Well, that's the way it is. And then the other one is probably not, this is at her suggestion totally. We have a fourth of our coverage goes to drugs. And so she said, I was asking for a $10 generic increase to put us in line with the county and OU. And notice that you can get a mail order 90-day supply for the same price. Pretty neat. Brand name, no generic, $35. And then brand name generic available. She actually looked at the numbers and came up with these recommendations. Since I'm not a heavy drug user, I don't really know how these relate. But I think what she was trying to do, or she has an agenda in mind. She feels pretty strongly this would reduce our costs. I'm hoping that she will also use the and she's got some time to work on this, I think, use the some of the buying groups that Ray Hazlett talked about, for example. You understand what I mean? Remember how we've been paying maybe what you call retail, maybe you need a sort of managed care approach in the drug arena too, because we have a separate entity doing our drugs. And by, probably, but one of these times, I'll be giving her permission to go out and look for a drug plan that's better than what we have, or at least let her compare, okay? Because we never, I always thought the drugs were covered by the insurance thing, and I felt like I knew pretty much what was going on. And it was shocking to know that we had a separate entity and we'd never had a contract because it was such a small amount. But, now it's $500,000, so we really need to
I
have that
think she's been
contract.
looking at that already.
Yeah, no, she's going to. I have no problem. I mean, it's going to be for the first of the year, because that's when our policy flips over. Anyway, so I've been a busy person here. Anybody have a question on that one? Going once? Yeah.
I just have to comment again, and once again, additional costs are being borne by the non-union personnel of the city, and then we have contract negotiations that have to change for our unionized employees. And again, it's coming mid-year as opposed to in consideration or conjunction with a wage increase. So.
Yeah, and we did have a salary increase at the start of the year, which, and I've heard this from other people, and what I said is either you'll have the luxury of keeping your job, or maybe we can even give a salary increase. I mean, I think it may be that bad. I mean, how many people did OU lose? How many people will they not replace? And, I think it's been a wonderful program up until now. And I think we're going to have well, I will stop there. You can say what you want, Jim, what you were talking about. But we're moving toward having this. And I do understand the non-union situation. It makes me sick, especially those that are not covered by the longevity plan. They are doubly, what's a good word that isn't screwed? You understand that I think it's terrible, but at this point, I would really like to say we're going to give a good increase at the start of the year to the non-union employees. What are the chances, auditor? I want to ask the auditor. It's a long time to ask the auditor. She doesn't have numbers. Okay, so, and guess what? If SB 5 is not overturned, I think, that will be yet another kink in the system.
That would change things.
That would definitely change things. And the two-part plan that we had, I mean, we're making the non-union conform, and basically what we are asking for. And it pains me, especially those that are not covered by longevity that are relatively recent employees. But I don't know a way around it other than printing money in the council chambers. So. But maybe we'll find it. Copier? Yeah, if it's a high-quality one, too. I don't know. Anybody else have an opinion on this? Things are tough.
I'm requesting to put an executive session on the agenda for the 5th, to which you will be invited, and the law director, to talk about negotiations. So that is that. So you'll see that on the agenda next week. What is that? July 5th. If we're all back from the fireworks by then.
Okay.
Okay, we are running a little bit over.
Some miscellaneous.
Oh, you have miscellaneous? I'm sorry.
May I?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes. Fire Chief Troxel has indicated
Oh, yes, okay.
the need
I totally forgot, sorry.
for a larger generator for the new ladder truck. And this would enable items to be added over the life of the truck. It would cost about $3,500, and if done now, it would be cheaper than retrofitting later. And so, does the Service Safety Director have anything to?
And just that I wholeheartedly support it. I know that, we're buying a $1,030,000 truck. So to me, to do this upgrade at this time and have the generator that has a greater capacity for a mere $3,500 is just good sense. So,
It seems practical.
yeah.
I think not only plugs you've had to add in 20 years and, more electronics and stuff like that. So we don't know what additional equipment will end up on the truck.
I just don't recall.
Yeah.
You probably did, but I don't recall.
I don't
Okay,
know.
so we'll have this
We'll have to suspend.
next meeting.
Do we need to suspend?
Well, no, I do not believe so, but we'll have to discuss with the auditor whether or not we pull it in an appropriations or if we have to amend the purchase agreement, so, yeah.
Okay, so it'll be up in some form.
In some form? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move quickly into our special session. We have several ordinances for second reading, which are just that. They're just going to be read by me. Ordinance 6311, an ordinance amending Athens City Council Code Title 13, General Offenses, Chapter 13.04, Offenses Against Public Peace, Section 13.04.10, Unnecessary Noise, introduced by Councilmember Kuhn. Ordinance 6411, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to purchase a police cruiser, introduced by Member Kuhn. Ordinance 6511, an ordinance declaring a police cruiser no longer needed for a municipal purpose, introduced by Member Kuhn. Ordinance 6611, an ordinance authorizing the cleaning and repair of water wells, introduced by Member Bain. Ordinance 6711, excuse me, an ordinance providing for the issuance of not to exceed $850,000 of notes by the City of Athens, Ohio, in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying part of the costs of improvements to this municipality's wastewater treatment plant and declaring an emergency, introduced by Member Bain. Ordinance 6911,
Yes.
an ordinance amending Ordinance 10710, authorizing construction of Phase 1 of the Northwest Bike Path Extension from the West State Park and across the Hocking River, Project 255,
On this one.
introduced by Member Nisley. Ordinance 7011, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for construction of the Safe Routes to School Stair Project, project number 256, introduced by Member Nisley.
That's first reading.
And then we have three ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 7111, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise and accept bids where necessary and enter into contracts for construction engineering and construction of the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant Project 248, directing the auditor to borrow funds and declaring an emergency. Member Bain, you spoke about this earlier.
Right, I'd just like to reiterate that I'm requesting the auditor to borrow funds, please. I'm not up to directing the auditor at this point in my life. Other than that, we will be getting $362,000 of this money back as soon as we've completed the work. And we will pay $188,000. And this is part of our upgrade, things that we would have done anyway. And I guess I, again, have to say good work for getting the money, although it's a slightly inconvenient situation because it has to be expended by July 2012, and we will not be well, it won't be an inconvenient situation, it's just a cash flow situation. So there it is.
Anybody at the stable have something to
Contract
say about that?
construction.
No? Okay. Ordinance 7211, an ordinance amending the 2011 appropriation ordinance, introduced by Councilmember Sands. This is the ordinance that we talked about earlier, the community corrections grant that we need to amend $10,000 to be appropriated for expenditure by the municipal court.
And this is what we'll have a special meeting tomorrow night if we have enough members, quorum.
That's
at
correct.
8:30.
And so we're reading it for the first time tonight. If we have all the members, we will suspend on it tomorrow night at 8:30 at the community center. If we don't have enough members show up, we will have a luncheon meeting, 12 o'clock, in the council chambers to read this ordinance for the third time, and we, at that point, we need 4 members to pass it, to accept it. So
Okay.
we need 6 members to suspend the rules. Finally, first reading on ordinance 7311, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA federal local let project agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for the Safe Routes to School stair construction and declaring an emergency. Introduced by Councilmember Nisley. We'll ask the Service Safety Director if she has anything to say about that.
We had previously had 7011 authorizing the contract for construction, but we do need this in order to enter into the LPA agreement.
Okay. And this set of steps is where?
2 sets of steps, one by between Fort to the bottom of the Armory on Carpenter, the other one from West Elementary down to the apartment complex below. This is a well-traveled route between West Elementary kids to the apartments down there. Again, it's part of our overall safe routes to school where the kids can hopefully walk to and from work with safety and not worry about traffic. This is round 2, right? Phase
Yes.
2. The first one, of course, was, you see the evidence of it by East Elementary, West Elementary, and Morris. It is Morris, no, it's middle school. The crossing lights that we put in place, the raised crosswalk on Morris, and the sidewalks on Verona, as well as the ramp on East State to help kids basically, go to school and not play in traffic. Other questions there? No?
Okay, then we will adjourn the special session and go back to committee meetings, beginning with Planning and Development Committee. Member Bain, I believe, is covering this.
Right. Well, the first thing on the list is the AEP franchise renewal. And I believe Oahu probably should be sponsoring this, but I was wondering if either the planner or service director or the mayor has anything they could tell us about characterizing our franchise renewal with AEP.
This is a franchise renewal that was done about 25 years ago. This gives the AEP or the successor to Columbus Southern Power Company the ability to maintain, construct, and acquire basically electrical lines in a city right-of-way. The last time it was done was 01/01/86. And again, this is a 25-year re-up. We are actually going to shorten the time span. The conversation, we brought it to I believe, Ron Lucas brought it to the Tree Commission to have their input. I've sat through at least 2 meetings, I believe, with the AP people. They're a little bit leery about putting wording in about the protection of the tree lines and other parts of that. There was actually a section that was put into it by the Tree Commission. It was kind of rejected by AP. The final ordinance does talk about, some best practices. We decided to go with a 10-year term so we could actually come up if we have problems and revisit it at an earlier date. We actually kicked around doing a 5-year as well, but the last comeback from AEP was a 10-year. It hasn't changed that much since the 86 franchise. I think it ends, June, July, end of
It's in
July?
August,
Oh,
yeah.
it should say in here, shouldn't it? Let's see if I can find when it falls out of effectiveness here.
There was some discussion at these meetings regarding putting in best practices and then also a request for us to somehow govern private property when AEP. Bottom line for AEP was worker safety. They are unwilling to put in anything that might compromise that in any way. So that's
Yes,
what we're
the
talking about.
franchise.
Remember, we had a really serious discussion with the people up on the hill when we had the AEP guys come in and we talked to them. They wanted to, the guy who was a forester, the sort of tree farmer guy, had opinions. You just cut that tree the way you want to cut it because that's the way we do that. And I think that, other people, especially the people in my neighborhood, said, well, I don't want them cutting the trees that way. And they were told, you were here, Paul, and I think Ed was here, and they said, well, and Jim too, if you put these standards into place, they follow them in some places. Why wouldn't they follow them here? And I can't remember, I said to myself, I'm going to remember those standards, because some of the people up on the hill are so mad about the way they had butchered the trees.
Yeah, it's some kind of standard.
ISA, Society of Arborists, or what have you, but
I don't know. I can't remember.
we have not, it's my understanding that we have not located a similar ordinance in the state of Ohio. Other states have put in different things, but we have not.
Well, I guess the
But we
chances of
can
doing that
request
are slim to none.
some clarification from the law director prior to a first reading.
Yeah, well, I mean, no history there, but, the basic thing is that the people whose trees get butchered by these guys who call themselves urban foresters are the ones that get really mad at us, and it's not, it's like, and then I remember that guy sitting back there and suggesting to us, well, I'm a forester, and okay, but, I think we can do it this way, and you better jolly well like it, because our contract says we can. And he was pretty arrogant, wasn't he, as you recall?
And again, the conversation with them when we started this negotiation was they do electricity first. Remember, on the other side, we've had 2 resolutions, council in my purview, of saying, give us better electricity, we don't want the outages. A lot of the outages are caused by tree falls and limb falls, and therefore...
Or bad maintenance.
Well, bad maintenance as well, yes.
Sometimes that more than the other two.
Well, again, they really didn't want that codified, at least that's the feeling I got. I think where the last conversation was whether we could actually dictate what they do on right-of-ways on private property. That was the sticking point on the last conversation I had with the LAHU, I think, and the Tree Commission, whether they wanted to branch out. Because really, we have control of the city right-of-ways, but we can't really negotiate with the private property. What we've been asking for them is to do some good best practices, communication. One of the conversations, I think, is that they usually contract out, either Aspen is
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, Aspen is usually a subcontractor. What you're seeing many times is they'll come along and say, we need to trim a tree, and we'll trim it. And I think the visualization when they say, we will trim a tree, does not mean the same to the property owner. Well, that's it. If the property owner would come back and say, I'd rather you taking it all down rather than just butcher half of it. And that, to me, is part of the communication that they need to be adopting as a best practices. The present franchise ends August 1st.
And that's why I put it on the agenda, because the Tree Commission members said we needed to get cracking on it.
Yes.
So, in other words, there's not much hope for the trees that are in the way.
Well,
I do recall in that meeting we had requested that they actually provide, because they outlined to us how they do the outreach and how they do the notifications and claim that they don't, other than emergency situations, come onto the property owner's land without their knowledge in advance, giving them an opportunity to meet. But, again, I can get that clarified and ask the law director for...
But, it's what they say versus what Aspen does. And that's the discrepancy.
Yes, and the idea of having a protocol for contacting the property owner, et cetera. When does it constitute an emergency? Is it the power is out? Is there a tree lying on the line? Is it arcing? I mean, we got into that dialogue at the meetings at that point.
Well, I remember somebody in my ward was parking under the tree they were going to cut continuously, trying to prevent them from doing it. I think they finally had to tow the car. And then they moved out of town because they were so irate. But I think we're talking not about the emergencies, which I think most people understand, but instead
The maintenance.
the maintenance stuff.
That's correct.
And I don't have a lot of faith that this will change, but I was hoping that those standards would be in it. But we'll see. So you're going to have it up we'll put this up, and do you think Oahu's ready to talk on it?
I have no idea.
Okay, we'll put it up
Okay.
with him as sponsor
If you
then.
want, we could always put tree section in and see if they...
We could ask them if they're coming. Next bit of damage is from Paul Logue. If he would come forward, he requested that we add some modern definitions. As we're moving forward, anybody see the picture of the house in Bismarck being torn apart? It had a moat around it, but it was just collapsing with the flood of the mouse that roared again, right? Or the river, whatever it was, Soar?
Bad.
Bad. I mean, it's amazing to look at. So with that in mind, how long have we had flood protection using insurance? Paul?
In Athens?
No, in the world, in the U.S.
least 50 years,
Yeah,
I believe. for
older than
FEMA.
you.
Yeah.
So therefore, we need to make some changes in the definitions, right? Take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, council. Yeah, what I'm requesting, we have in our flood damage prevention ordinance, Title 25, within the existing ordinance, we have Section 2504.12, which is the establishment of a riparian setback. The language is already in the code. What we don't have is 3 definitions that should cover to explain what is required in that ordinance. We need definitions for the ordinary high water mark, which is mentioned in the ordinance, or in the existing language. We don't describe exactly what a riparian area is, and we also don't define what a riparian setback actually means. I just noticed this about a week ago, just reading through the ordinance, and our comprehensive plan also recommends the creation of the riparian setback language, which we adopted 2 years ago when we adopted a new floodplain ordinance. But for some reason, it appears to me as if these 3 definitions were just missed at the time that the ordinance was adopted. And so I just thought we should clean that up. As far as I know, there's absolutely no issues pressing with this. It's just due diligence for when this issue presents itself, that there's no gray area with what we need or what we mean by riparian setback, riparian area, and ordinary high water mark. So,
Do you think ordinary high water mark is something that could be litigated in a flood situation?
well, the definition, no, I don't.
Okay.
It defines the bed of a water course, in short, and it would be an area that is where water is generally continuously flowing, and it would be marked by erosion, which would be natural from water. So an ordinary high water mark would be the high water mark on an ordinary day.
Where the geese hang out, right?
Yeah, more or less, yeah. So you'd have an extreme high water mark, which would be your biblical flood or your 100-year flood, and then you'd have your low water marks, which you might see during the drought periods. But I think it's a reasonable definition. It's a standard definition, the one I used. It's the same definition that was recommended in our comprehensive plan. I did double check through several ordinances and see what ODNR recommended, and it was consistent. So,
Questions? Thank you for bringing that up.
you're welcome.
We'll
Thank
have
you.
it up for first reading. Should I put Chris Fall's name on it, you think? Well, we can all just say all members of council, huh?
Like I said, there's no rush on it, so
We'll get it done by the end of July.
thank you.
So now, it's my pleasure to welcome our old colleague, Comprehensive Advisory Commission Head for his annual report, and that would be Ed Bone. He's got a lot of paper with him. Are we going to allow him to talk more than 3 minutes is the question.
Good evening, members of council and those vast audience which is here this evening. I'm Edward Baum, and I am chair in my role as chair of the Comprehensive Plan Review and Advisory Commission. Comprehensive plans are strange creatures. They're strange in many ways. One is they are a snapshot at a particular point of time to some distant future. And you never really know what's going to happen between that snapshot and the snapshot you would like to see in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is. And you never really know what's going to happen in that time. Floods, new construction, new businesses come in, businesses leave, new technology. So you're always trying to figure out how to get to that snapshot in the future and determine even whether that snapshot still is relevant for the present time. One of the other things that's strange about comprehensive plans is that they're easily forgotten. Quite often people write a plan and it gets put on a shelf. Let me give an example. There is, as you leave council chambers each time, on the wall, this plaque. How many of you remember what it says?
We won an award for it.
See, that's the problem with comprehensive plans.
And I won't-
Because what this is the Ohio Planning Conference in 2005 gave the city of Athens an award for comprehensive planning for small jurisdictions. We got an award for our comprehensive plan. And yet, it sits on that wall and becomes part of the sort of everything, and people don't even know it's there. And so when you look at this document, I have to get the right, this document, and you say, that's the comprehensive plan, most people have not read it, except for Council Member Bain, and Mayor
But you can't
Weil.
remember.
I suspect that no one in this room, except for one person, two persons, have actually read this document and know what's in it. And yet, it is supposed to guide the city as it makes decisions to get to that distant vision or future. And the vision's an interesting thing, and that's one of the interesting things about concept plans. At least ideally, they are inspiring, because they do have a vision of the future. If you look at the one that was adopted by council, I get the right one here. This is the reason we have two plans is council, well, you may
We have
recall,
one
those of you who were around
It
at
was
the time.
adopted by council.
We had a plan that was presented in 2003, and was finalized through all the readings and everything in the public hearings in 2005. Then the Planning Commission took a look at it and said there's some real problems. In spite of the award, there's some real problems with this in terms of the way it's structured and the way it reads. So they wrote an entirely different document based upon the first document, and City Council didn't like that and went back to the original document, which they adopted in 2007. That gives you an idea of the problems with comprehensive plans. But if you look at the comprehensive plan that was adopted by council, it has a vision. It says that community vision is expressed in the following specific development strategies, goals, and objectives, complete with relevant benchmarks identified, doers and beneficiaries. I think they were a little bit more optimistic than reality was there. The material covers a wide range of subjects which combine to form a comprehensive picture of desired development and redevelopment. The vision includes recognition that quality of life hinges on a quality environment with clean water, air, wildlife corridors, parks, and protected view sheds, in balance with needed employment opportunities and economic development. Economic development includes purposeful building on the strength of OU as a job-creating engine of emerging ideas and technology, along with the development of unique local business reflective of local culture. This vision also embraces the importance of stable and appealing neighborhoods, preserved historical sites, and a unique sense of place and urban character woven together with a transportation system that includes automobiles, transit, pedestrians, and bicycle movement. That's a nice vision, a place of where we wanted to go, but recognizing that someone is needed to occasionally remind you that there is a comprehensive plan, and that perhaps it would be useful if city council members and the members of the administration looked at it on occasion and said, well, what can we do to move us forward in that direction? City Council in 2007 created the commission, of which I am chair, including members of City Council, members of the community, members of neighborhood associations, some what we call identified members, the mayor, city planning, the city planner, the county planner, and others. And they began to try to identify the kinds of things to remind you about. Now, our first task, of course, was to decide exactly what we're about to do. We spent really the whole first year identifying what were called measures of progress on the plan. The second year, we spent part of the time in then trying to develop statistics that would measure what we were trying to measure, which we found was more difficult than we thought. In fact, in some cases, we simply recognized by the end of our second year that we lacked the capacity in the city to be able to do that. We need a planning department of several people, not just one person who occasionally gets some aid from an intern or someone else who volunteers. And so we then, in our third year, and that's the report that you have in front of you, turned our attention to what do people who are affected by the plan and affected by the city think in terms of what we have accomplished thus far in moving us on the major areas of the plan, and what should the city be doing to move us even further. And so what you have here in your hands is that report. And what it does is it goes through each of the major areas: economic development, environment, housing, history, arts and culture, public safety, transportation, infrastructure, and talks with those people, and they are identified on page 4, people that we talked to over a period of a year, and others. And you'll notice that people from the private sector, from the public sector, from governmental agencies, nonprofits, and simply said, where should we be going? And I'm not going to read you this document. I figure you're all intelligent people. But what it does is it says what the plan says, what are our goals, and what we've accomplished in the last at least 3 years in moving us toward those goals, and what things really we should be doing both as council and administration insofar as possible. And you may say, well, we really can't do this, we really can't do that. But the people we talked to and the commission itself said that these are doable things. At least you should consider them. Some are rather specific. For example, if you look at page 13, one of the very specific things in the very bottom of page 13 is complete and adopt the new natural hazard mitigation plan by early 2012. That's specific. It's being worked on. It will be adopted. That can be put a check mark by that and said, yeah, we did that. Some are yearly. They're not specific goals of adopting something. So if you look at one page earlier, page 12, and it says what is still to be done, the second item, yearly updating of infiltration and inflow fixes. That's sort of a continual thing. You'll do that every year, presumably from now until the city no longer exists. And other things are rather broad. So if you look on page 7, and it says increase tree canopy coverage from 27 to 40% by 2015. Well, it may be longer than that. I mean, a lot of that we have no control over because much of the city is controlled by the university, at least the land area, and other things. But some are rather broad. And so what we're asking the council to do, and the planning commission when we meet with them, and the administration, is to look at each of the items in the area of what is to be done. And if it is in your specific committee purview, to say, okay, the people of the city, through the comprehensive plan, have indicated that we really need to move forward on these issues. And you may decide, no, we really don't want to, and that's your decision. Well, for example, it says, think about bed and breakfast opportunities in the city of Athens. You may decide, no, we don't want bed and breakfast in the city of Athens. Who knows? That's up to you. But I would recommend that each member of council take this and say, okay, does that apply to my area? If so, what can we be doing to move us in that direction? And that is our report, and I will now answer any questions you might have. I was going to say, as I stood up here originally with tongue-in-cheek, that I'm glad you saved the best for last. But then also recognizing I and Paul are what stands between you and adjournment.
It's only 8 o'clock.
First of all, thanks for doing all the work on this. I would also point out that we do have the comprehensive plan online as a PDF, and you can always search it if you're looking for something that relates to what was discussed here.
Right.
I guess the question I have is, do you see anything that's acutely needed in this plan immediately? I mean, we've done some of the stuff, I know, and I think some of the stuff is very, as you say, ongoing.
Member Gosley would love it when I would say that a whole big area that has really developed since the plan was originally worked on is the area of the environment. And there are lots of things in that environment. It's the largest section in this report. A lot of things dealing with energy, sustainability, view sheds. Those things, I think, really need to come a little bit more to the fore. I would defer a little bit to my colleague who's quietly sitting over there nodding, because our planner really does an excellent job. I've enjoyed working with him, and I will look forward to continue to working with him. But he has quite often a better sense of where we can go and what's needed now. Now, unfortunately, he's only one person in what really should be an 8-person office, and so he's doing lots of things.
Job security.
I think that whole area, if you look at the environment, there are a lot of things in there I think the city should be doing. We pride ourselves on being a green city. Mayor Abel, one of his last things he was doing when he was leaving office had a whole series of things on the Green City. You yourself, as mayor, have emphasized that, and I think that is something that we really need to work on. There's one other thing that I think we really need to do, and that you will find what of the plan itself. This is the bottom of the page 3. The essence of the city's current comprehensive plan is based on meetings, town halls, focus groups, and research done primarily 10 years ago. Although there have been some important areas identified in subsequent town meetings, such as the environment and sustainability, it is appropriate that the city begin the process of reviewing and revising the plan, or if needed, to develop a new plan which will cover the period 2015 to 2035. The American Planning Association recommends that plans be reviewed and updated every 5 years. We're way beyond that. And one of the things that we're agreed with is it's time to figure out the best way to go about reviewing, revising, or just redoing the whole process. I know I was going to jump in and say, yes, I want to do that, but it's something that really needs to be done. There's an old saying in strategic planning that says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And if we don't know where we're going as a city, we may end up some places we really don't want to be.
I think one of the things I've heard about the comprehensive plan was a lack of a cohesive vision. But again, we had a steering committee of 17 different members and a whole slew of different aspects in terms of what people consider very important. One of the things that I know that has been trotted out from the comprehensive plan regularly is the infill. And then I think what I've heard in the past couple of years is the fact that we've got too high a density. So I'm hearing a real conflict that goes on with which way we want to go on that. Is there any, I know you have a housing section in here.
There's a housing section that talks about the need to expand certain housing options, especially for the elderly, for the disabled, and for low-income people. The prices in the city of Athens, everyone here will attest, are higher than surrounding areas. I mean, if you compare them with New York or Washington, they're really low, 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 and people come from those cities and say, boy, you buy houses cheaply here. But try to tell someone who you're trying to hire for the city of Athens at one of the lower ranked levels and say, we'd like to live in the city, and they say, where? Because of the special nature. So that might be something to consider.
Again, thank you for this. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Member Bain.
I just wonder what you mean by establish fiscal responsibility for shared resources.
For what?
Shared resources.
What page is that?
It's on page 6. Just wondered what that meant.
Well, let me get this back out again. There it is, page 6.
Under...
It's on the second page, yeah, it's under economic development.
I think this dealt with shared resources between the university and the city. For example, who's going to pay for your fire truck?
I think that was decided already.
Good thing you brought that up.
We're just going to raise the sewer rates to pay for it. Just for jokers. Of course. I have another question about economic development. I have a big question about what sustainability means at the city, but let me just ask that. I think that you've kind of missed, although you have it, I think, a little bit, not you, but in general, the importance of the local food industry. You have it a little bit, but I think when I go to Columbus, talk to people at Ohio State, they say, you guys, farmers market, CSAs, the whole, let's call it Leslie Shaller's kingdom, is an astonishing resource.
It is.
The second cluster, of course, has to be the solar. And the third one isn't as obvious, but they all relate to this. I mean, we've had real jobs stay here that could have gone anywhere because of the environment, right? We've all heard the story about the engineers faced with the opportunity to move elsewhere said, sorry, we're not going, we like it here. And I think that the whole package has created an opportunity for people that own buildings to rent them in a way that probably wouldn't be typical in another city. And in fact, there isn't even enough space for the newest member of this electronics industry that really didn't depend on any entity. It's the environment and the interaction between all of the different parts. You know, I mean, we couldn't have planned that if you had asked for it.
No.
And I think recognition of that is extremely important.
And that's why I think the
Some
commission feels that a revision or a completely new planning document that takes into account those kinds of things which really have developed over the last 5-10 years and give them proper emphasis.
They could have left over the past 5 or 10 years, but
Could have left.
instead are here because of the environment, because of the view sheds, which some people scoff at. And, you know, we've all heard the scoffing. And, you know, even with the noise, right? We can look at the warts and the advantages and say and the garbage and the litter. But, you know, I think that's one thing that is very important. And maybe it's the attitude of the people that live here that we haven't been able to measure and quantify.
I think you're right.
And the prize of the place that we have. Because I certainly prize it. I'm getting mushy. I feel privileged to live here most of the time.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate the work that was put into this, having sat on the early stages of this as well before Member Fall took over. I appreciate, too, that the Comprehensive Plan Review Commission report also includes a lot of our accomplishments, which I think is some of the references that Member Bain was acknowledging, which again is a credit to former Mayor Abel and then our current mayor as well, implementing these facets. Specifically, I was thinking about pedestrian-friendly neighborhoods and the effort to inventory the sidewalks and the improvements we've begun that have taken place, the ones we discussed tonight as well with the safe pathways to school, efforts to acknowledge safety. The fire department's average response time generally falls within a good or acceptable range. City Council has authorized the purchase of a new ladder truck, which we were just discussing. The police department, most calls the police department are responded to in 5 minutes or less. And there's many other acknowledgments in here of accomplishments and progress we've been able to implement, which again is noteworthy.
Yeah, we've made progress in lots of the things that we said we wanted to get from that early snapshot to the future snapshot. In some areas, we've gotten a little bit weak on, and some new areas have developed. And I think that's a realistic kind of thing. I think one of the things that Mayor Weil mentioned, that I don't know of a single, there are very few cities which have a single vision. Williamsburg, Virginia, has a single vision. I mean, that's a historic city, but once you get out of the historic district, it doesn't have a single vision. People only think of Williamsburg as the historic area, but there's really a larger city in that area. You talk about Nelsonville, Final Fridays, the arts area, but Nelsonville is more than that, and anyone who lives in Nelsonville will tell you that. One would argue that we are the quintessential university town. But we're more than that, and I think some of the things that Member Bain referred to are indicative of that. So that it's hard to take all of these different visions and pull them into one, and yet that's one of the responsibilities of a city council and an administration. You're never going to please everybody all the time.
Even very wrong.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Anything else? I think we're adjourned.
Yeah.